tror, det var 35 minutter.
Kom lige ved på videoen. Well, my dear audience, I think it's time for an explanation. What you are listening to here is the sound of waves breaking on the shore. Well, actually, it's two different sets of waves and two different shores they break onto. And of course, it's not just any shore in the world. It's the seashore of Alexandria, Egypt, and the banks of the River Nile in the middle of Cairo. The word Cairo, Al-Kahira in Arabic, means the triumphant one. And this is exactly what the story is about. Triumph. Before we reach Cairo and the triumphant conclusion, we're going back to Alexandria, to the waterfront in the hot summer of 2010. Up on the curb by the balustrade, along the street, a long line of people are standing, silently looking at the sea. They are all dressed in black, standing, silent. It's a strange moment, a sudden moment in the middle of the chaotic traffic. Silence spreads and covers the entire esplanade, a calm, sad silence. Hundreds of black silhouettes, just standing still. If we stand silent up here for a little while, maybe all of you can act as the water by standing up and swaying back and forth. Yes, that's good. Thank you. Silent stand is an activist act that was first practiced in Alexandria, Egypt, in the summer of 2010, to commemorate their friend Khaled Said and to protest against the way he died. A small group of internet enthusiasts invented the silent stand. A group of people meet up by the waterfront or elsewhere in the city, dressed in black, and stand in a line with about 5 meters between each, facing the water. they stand silent for some time, maybe reading the Quran or the Bible. Silent Stand was designed to bypass the strict Egyptian emergency law that has been in place for years, banning mass public assemblies, mass meaning 5 people or more. By keeping the 5 meters between them, the line of people in silent stand does not become a public assembly. Signs, banners, slogans, and other kinds of direct communication are also banned by the emergency laws. But by using the strict silence, this ban is also not relevant. Or, as someone commented on Facebook, if speaking up only brings more violence, then silence will have to articulate our grief. If speaking up only brings more violence, then silence will have to articulate our grief. Just think about that. Exactly by respecting the emergency laws and inventing another way of acting accordingly, the silent stand circumvents these laws. The main goal is to express sadness. We will just stand silent, upset, wearing black clothes, black because we are sad for what happened to our country and to what is happening daily to our people. Sadness is a fundamental human feeling. Sadness cannot be forbidden. Sadness is also a feeling everybody knows and can connect to. Sadness connects everyone. This is wrong, and we are all sad. So let's stand together here for a little while. Up here, we are sad, and you are the sea, gently swaying. City, into a small side street where we find a small cafe. This is where Said, a 28-year-old internet nerd, was arrested on June 6, 2010. His crime was that, quote, he posted a video on the internet of police officers sharing the spoils from a drug bust among themselves, end quote. He was on his way out of the cafe when 2 police officers grabbed him and dragged him away. He was then beaten to death. Quote, several eyewitnesses described how Khalid was taken by 2 policemen into the entrance of a residential building where he was brutally punched and kicked. The 2 policemen banged his head against the wall, the staircase, and the entrance steps. Despite his calls for mercy and asking them why they were doing this to him, they continued their torture until he died. End quote. The group behind the silent stands used Facebook to mobilize others to participate, creating a Facebook group called We Are All Khalid Said. They soon mobilized large crowds of people in Alexandria and all over Egypt to participate in the silent stands. By The third one, on July 9th, hundreds of people gathered along the coastline of Alexandria and the banks of the River Nile. And by the 4th and 5th, on July 23rd and August 20th, several thousands were standing silent, upset, wearing black. The turning point came when 2 photos of Khalid Said were made public on Facebook. The first one, a portrait of Khalid, just a normal young guy with a smart haircut and a gray sweatshirt. The second is a horrifying picture of Khalid's tortured face after he is killed. His face is completely demolished, one eye closed by the swollen eyelids, the lower lip split as if by a knife, several parts of his face swollen, his skull and chin looking almost amorphous. A pool of blood is seeping out beneath his head. 2 photos state the basic argument of the We Are All Khalid Said group. Khalid was a human being like everyone else. But the way he was treated is inhuman. We are human. The way we are treated is inhuman. Human, inhuman. The pool of blood beneath Khalid's tortured face is dark red, close to black. Soon it turns even darker, and a phantom rises out of it. This is the mummy of Khalid Said, returning from the dead to haunt the Egyptian regime. During the next 8 months, he staggers through Egyptian society, from the bottom to the top, cracking open all the closed doors of the dictatorial administration. From the deep, dark torture chambers of the Egyptian police to the luxurious, bright palaces of the Mubarak family. As summer turns to winter, another 4 people are beaten or tortured to death by the Egyptian authorities. Mohammed Ali Darwish, El Said, Bilal, Mustafa, Ataya, Ahmed, Shaban. The Egyptian state is notorious for its brutal and inhumane treatment of its enemies. By using the state of emergency laws in function for 29 years, the government and the police force keeps up a hardcore regime of surveillance, arrestations, torture, and killing that oppresses all legal opposition. Although Western governments have been fast to declare their support to human rights groups and democratic movements in the Middle East, a straight line goes from the Abu Ghraib scandal in Iraq to the killing of Khalid Said and the other torture victims in the last desperate autumn of the Hosni Mubarak regime. When the systematic use of torture by the U.S. military in Iraq and Afghanistan, in the prison cells of Abu Ghraib, Guantanamo, and Bahrain, was exposed in the international media around 2004-05, The coalition of the willing had to find other ways of interrogating the prisoners taken during the ongoing war on terror, building up an intricate web of secret, so-called renditions. A vast number of prisoners, or illegal combatants, as they are called, are transported around the world by the CIA to secret prisons in a number of countries in the former Eastern Europe and in the Middle East. Here they are being interrogated by local officials who have no problems in using a whole palette of techniques that in other countries are labeled as torture. Egypt was one of the key knots in this network. In the government of Mubarak, the CIA was always able to find a reliable partner when torture was needed. The rendition program was secret, but as recent documents revealed by WikiLeaks has probed, a range of European countries more or less willingly let the secret airplanes of CIA cross through their airspace and use their airports. In this sense, the U.S. and their willing coalition did not only work with Mubarak in the bright daylight as a close Mid-Eastern ally, they were also with him down in the dark torture cells, paying him off to do their dirty work for them, encouraging and expanding the business. When the gates of these prisons are torn open by the staggering mummy of Khaled Said, the ship not only hits the fan of Mr. Mubarak and his police forces, there are stains of blood hitting a whole range of Western leaders, now queuing by the sink. Now this, my dear listener, this is the sound of anger. By now, the sad introversion of the silent stand has turned outwards. People are angry. On November 28, 2010, there's an election for the Egyptian parliament. The opposition groups that by now have coalesced into a wide-reaching movement document not only a few, but an overwhelming mass of fraud and direct cheating in the election process. There are reports of opposition supporters being barred from polling stations and subjected to violence by thugs and criminals hired by the government. There are videos documenting election officials filling out voting cards. As a reaction, November 26th is announced as Egyptian Anger Day. The noise you are hearing here is from a noise parade that day, organized by a group of activists called Lazem. Anger is growing. The movement is growing. The noise is growing. Very soon, it will be a roar of rage, a deep, wild roar that will penetrate and chill the bone marrow of every corrupt administrator and despot, the entire Middle East. This is the shriek of the mummy, now becoming a roaring mass of angry protesters. Now, my dear audience, if you will collaborate on this last part, it will be nice. Please come closer and help us lift up this fabric. All of you, please. The pool of blood has now become larger. It's a whole area now. I know it's not a real square, but maybe you can imagine it as a square. Public square. In this narrative, it stands in for Tahrir Square, the famous Freedom Square in Cairo. Please gather around it and imagine that you are there. We are there. It's now January 25th, 2011. We are in Tahrir Square in Cairo, and it's time for a revolution. Worldwide Revolution, 2011, Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, the world. Share if you support the revolutions. The truth only writes. The whole of humanity has finally woken up. We have had enough of the corruption and destruction of the evil Illuminati. God willing, we will destroy this worldwide corruption and replace it with a system of sovereign nations working together to build up economies with real money based on no credit systems, no derivatives, and placing the human spirit as the bottom line. Not fake money and consumption. We are too intelligent to buy into false notions of communism or capitalism. These things don't exist as systems. They are only aspects. The only good government is that which protects and benefits the people. Anything contrary is illegitimate. People of the world, unite. We don't need the Illuminati. We don't want their new world order of death and destruction. We are human beings. We are created by God with a purpose. Let us unite against our common enemy as one humanity. Victory is with the believers. May Allah reward you. Peace. The revolution starts January 25th, 2011. It's like an ongoing explosion of fearless engagement. Thousands and other thousands of new protesters swarm into Tahrir Square to be part of the uprising. The movement is now consisting of a whole range of independent groups and persons. Even though the different groups have completely different agendas, they act with sober restraint. Even the Muslim Brotherhood, feared by the whole European elite to be taking over with a new fundamentalist regime, refrain from taking the leadership or pushing their own agenda. This is an uprising searching for a leader. As Al Jazeera is repeating over and over again, scanning Tahrir Square for possible candidates. But they are wrong. This revolution is headless. There is no leader. Wael Ghonim is one of the two administrators of the We Are All Khaled Said Facebook page. In an interview on the CBS talk show 60 Minutes, he states, "Our revolution is like Wikipedia, okay? Everyone is contributing content, but you don't know the names of the people contributing the content." This is exactly what happened. Revolution 2.0 in Egypt was exactly the same. Everyone contributing small pieces, bits and pieces. We drew this whole picture of a revolution, and no one is the hero in that picture. But if there's no direct leadership and still more and more people participating, how does the movement develop? How are decisions taken, and how is the correlated, highly disciplined and extremely focused attitude of nonviolence kept? How do these millions of individuals in a seemingly dispersed bunch of small activist groups suddenly, in one day, become one? How do the masses become the people? Overnight and out of the blue. The American sociologist Georgi Katsiafikas has invented the term the Eros effect to describe such a movement. Yes, it's not a joke. He actually calls it the Eros effect. Quote, "The Eros effect occurs in movements when the basic assumptions of a society, the authority of the government, the hierarchy, vanish overnight. During moments of the Eros effect, popular movements not only imagine a new way of life and a different social reality, but millions of people live according to transformed norms, values, and beliefs." End quote. Here, the instinctual need for freedom becomes a new collective identity. In Tahrir Square, the oppressed masses are now becoming human. Human for the first time in 30 years. And the whole state system of oppression is fought back. And now, everyone is actually participating. High and low, rich and poor, young and old, women and men, Christian and Muslim, even the secular, join in. After a couple of days of dramatic street fighting with the police forces, Tahrir Square is taken. People are now staying overnight, living on the square. Tahrir has become an image, a model of a possible society, a model of the true public space, open for all. It is the power of this image that overthrows the regime. It is not so important if the number of protesters are 1 million or 500,000, As soon as the true symbolic image of Tahrir Square is established, all resistance becomes futile. The image of open participatory democracy as performed by the millions in Tahrir Square is so strong that no one can resist it. It's a new icon of freedom, and as long as the revolution can hold Tahrir Square, this image radiates out to the rest of Egypt, to the rest of the Middle East, to the whole wide world. Tahrir becomes the center of the world, a new site of hope in bleak and dark times. Welcome to the Republic of Tahrir Square, Cairo. In addition to freedom of speech and democracy for all, we have the following free services: hospital, daily newspaper, kitchen for hot meals, security, artists' corner, singing and slogans club, poetry competitions, border control, science exhibition, and political brainstorming sessions. Not only that, a free school has just started where several languages are taught free. On February 11th, in the evening, there's a short communiqué by the Vice President, Omar Suleiman, on national TV. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, my fellow citizens, in the difficult circumstances our country is experiencing, President Mohammed Hosni Mubarak has decided to give up the office of the President of the Republic and instructed the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces to manage the affairs of the country. May God guide our steps. And now, my dear audience, please help us get rid of this strange fabric and join us in performing the last image, Triumph. Please join Khaled Said, the mummy, now dancing in the ruins of the regime that killed him. The curse is over. He has become millions. We are all Egyptians.